More of the Buffalo Wild Wings Pick 3 you can play right now. NextRoundLive.com. NextRoundLive.com. Hats off to LT. He's giving Ole Miss and LSU the respect it deserves. You go to this game tomorrow night in Death Valley for Ole Miss. They just really haven't had a ton of success as the favorite in that place.
Well, I'll tell you, at home after a bye, and that's what Brian Kelly's coming. So they faced FCS, bye. Or not FCS, it was South Alabama. So
hey, now.
Group of five.
Yeah.
Then a bye. So Brian Kelly's 15-2 straight up and 12-5 against the number at home after a bye. So he's been good in these spots. Now, they're well rested. Are they as good as Ole Miss? I don't know. I still don't know a lot about either one of these teams.
Yeah, schedule was part of the discussion yesterday, and we'll talk to Todd Furman about this game coming up at the top of the hour. Brownie, Ole Miss is on a grind right now. And LSU is the schedule, LT just pointed out on the schedule, a little more rested probably of a football team for the Tigers.
Probably so. But based on what Lance said, they were able to rest late in that South Alabama game and then get a bye week. I just think the pressure on these coaches is the massive storyline here. And the fact that Ole Miss has not won in this stadium, as you mentioned, since 2008. I mean, they do not play well at Tiger Stadium.
Yeah, and I wonder, I think one of the great matchups is going to be this defensive front for Ole Miss against the offensive line for LSU. Because coming into the season, people said this might be the best offensive line in all of college football. They've only given up 2 sacks the entire year. I think more of a challenge here. You look at Lane Kiffin, his history in Baton Rouge. He's 0-2. Straight up. He's 0-2 against the number. He's lost these games by an average of 15 points per game. I lean LSU. I don't love them, though.
What was always a guarantee when CBS had this game? Always a guarantee when
they
CBS
would show you Billy Cannon.
Do you think ABC will do that now that ABC has this game? 6:30 Saturday night. I think I saw that Joe Tess is on this game. Is Joe Tess going to set it up?
Oh, yeah. Who'll ever forget Billy
Cannon, Jesse.
Yeah, the stat to watch in this game, and right now Ole Miss has a problem with this. When you know they're passing on third down situations and they've got to throw the football. Last week against South Carolina, they were 3 of 13 on third down. You go back against Kentucky, problems on third downs in that loss. They are struggling on third down plays.
What grade would you give Jackson Dart? We gave midterm grades. What grade would you give Jackson Dart on the
Flat
season?
C right now.
A C? He's leading the conference in passing.
Flat C for me right now.
Probably would go a B.
Dunaway, hang on. I got to go back to Dunaway here.
Stats, man. He did nothing against Kentucky. Did nothing, and they lost the football game. That's a C. They're supposed to be unbeaten right now.
I mean, he had 261 pass yards and a touchdown against Kentucky.
I thought he was decent. I thought it was more. I mean, we wouldn't even be talking about this if it wasn't, the 4th and 6 where they went up top and just a beautiful throw from Vandegrift.
I mean, I'm going to see where he is nationally. I know you're just discounting stats.
I think it would be a B.
He's third nationally in passing. I think he's got the second most.
Brandon, you asked me my grade. He's a C. They're supposed to be unbeaten right now. He's the leader of the team. That offense has not been what they're supposed to be. Those stats coming against who'd they play those first few games? They played Kentucky and South Carolina, and what they scored last week, 27. What they score, 17 against Kentucky. That's Kentucky and South Carolina in the SEC. Everyone else has been bull crap on their schedule. They've been nobody.
So I assume Carson Beck's even worse because of what he did against Kentucky.
I mean, Carson Beck at least has the Clemson game to lean on.
Well, he's got the Alabama second half, too. Yeah. But, I mean, he was horrible against Kentucky. But he was worse than Jackson Dart.
He had 3 picks against Bama.
He was horrible against Alabama the first half. He cost him the game in the first half.
I'm just saying, Jackson Dart's second most pass yards in the country for a coach that generally runs the ball more than he throws. Dart, numbers-wise.
So just remind everybody who they beat in the first three or four games.
Okay, give me a second.
Yeah, because you're gonna get a lot of bad in those first 3 games.
All right, so they beat Furman 76-0.
Yeah,
they beat Middle Tennessee 52-3.
Yeah, you get some stats in those games.
They won at Wake. He did. They won at Wake 40-6.
Yep.
They beat EG's Georgia Southern squad 52-13. Gatta. Georgia Southern got their ass out of there,
and then they lost.
They lost to Kentucky 20-17. Beat South Carolina on the road 27-3.
Yeah. So when you played somebody breathing, you've scored 17 and 27. I don't think he's playing great football right now.
And I got to give him credit though. Like the numbers weren't bad against Kentucky. Kentucky's only allowing 13.4 points per game.
My bookie is locked and and loaded for another week of college football, and so too am I and my buddy Tom Luginbill. This is Monday Morning Live, part of the Next Round family, as we start our hours of continuous football broadcasting from Birmingham and the foothills of the Carolinas. Tom Luginbill of ESPN, locked in with the battle red Next Round hat, ready to go for Week 8 of college football. Luke, can you believe it's Week 8 already?
No, and I feel like I do this every single year, Jim. It's like, wait, what? How did we get to this point, man? You wait the entire offseason for all of this greatness, and then it flies by in the blink of an eye.
It does. And the older you get, the faster it flies by.
I know.
Speaking of flying by, happy birthday to your wife, Tanil. Did not
Thank
know
you.
she shared the birthday with my son, Carter.
Oh, happy birthday to your son.
Yeah, yesterday was Carter's birthday. Both of them in their 20s, it looks like. So happy birthday to Tanil. Beautiful, beautiful wife there. We got a lot to get to, some big games nationally. But as always, when the tide is riding and it's not the way it looked sometimes under Nick Saban, we're gonna start right there. Alabama survived South Carolina 27-25. They're 5-1 on the year. Alabama led this game 14-0. And then it got really close, 19 straight from South Carolina. I have a couple of points I want to make off of this, but just your overall thought on that Alabama win over South Carolina from you to start us off.
I thought there was a tremendous amount of situational awareness that was lacking from Alabama throughout the course of this game. The last 5 or 6 minutes or so of the second quarter were inexplicable, sloppy, dangerous when it comes to the types of plays that you're making and then what they led to. I don't understand right now why Jalen Milroe seems to have this penchant for holding on to the football and especially against a team like that, whose two best players are along the defensive front in Kennard and Stewart. There just doesn't seem to be this urgency of dominance from this football team. And then you work yourself into the second half. And listen, I understand the 3rd and 10, and I know that it's difficult to be running wide open and catch a pass and then tell yourself to fall down.
Yep.
Right. Which is exactly what should have happened and what should have been told to anybody in that huddle. Listen, if we get the first down here, get on the ground. They have no timeouts left. It's 1:55. You got to have some awareness of the game, what the opponents got left in the tank, and by scoring there, okay, while the crowd was roaring and it looked and felt great for the moment, it created opportunities for South Carolina and almost cost Alabama the game.
Yeah. And that is coaching. That's coaching. At some point in practices or in that huddle or both, you've coached that up. I am a elderly old man now. I'm in the 4th quarter of my life now, and I am screaming, fall down, fall down, fall down. I've never played college football a day in my life, but I was aware enough in that situation. I got laughed at. I won't name names. I got laughed at in our group chat when I said, you got to fall down there because they on the other sideline, listen, we're trying to stop them from getting a first down. But if they get the first down, don't tackle. Don't tackle because you got to let them score, because our only chance of winning at that point is letting them score.
The fact that South Carolina had a bust on that play should have helped them.
Yep. That's right.
I mean, it should have played, if you're counting on the other team, right? I don't. It's unbelievable.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable
because South Carolina defensively was selling out to stop the first down, right? So that was their chance. So you beat me over the top. I gambled on this. I lost the gamble, but we're going to let you score now. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Okay, let's go back to right before the half. This was the first thing I wanted to bring up with you. Me personally, I'll start off. I loved Kalen DeBoer's aggressiveness right before the half at Wisconsin. We talked about it here on Monday Morning Live, that Nick Saban would have handed off, and we'd have gone to the locker room with whatever the score was up there in Madison that day. And we came on here and I raved about, man, that Kalen DeBoer, 2 passes, touchdown, that's aggressive. Okay, so here you are right before the half. They've scored as 14-7, and this is the other side of the sword here because you get that penalty that backs you up now half the distance to the goal line, and instead of running and going to the locker room 14-7, you still sort of controlling the game, you decide to pass, and they make Jalen make that bad decision, and there's a safety, you kick it off, boom, there's a field goal, and in a minute and 38 seconds, it's gone from 14-0 to 14-12, and it's a different game. What do you think about aggressiveness in that situation?
Again, the situational awareness is lacking. I think when you gave up the 7 and you're close to getting into the locker room and you've got the ball, I get it if you're at the 50-yard line or you're at the -40 or what have you. But in that situation, I think you got to head into the locker room and regroup and not provide more potential momentum for the other team, because that's all that did was take the air out of the stadium, put momentum on South Carolina's sideline, and then you go into the locker room and Alabama, instead of feeling good about where they are, you've just given that all and gift wrapped it to South Carolina, and now you're scrambling a little bit in the locker room. And so again, I put some of it on Jalen Milroe too for his poor handling of how he managed that play and holding on to the football the way he did, and then the moving into a forced error is what he did there.
Yeah. The other thing I want to get to is the defense, and we'll get to your chats in a second, and everything that's being brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. The promo code is next round. No space there, just the 2 words smashed together, next round. When you sign on, there's a sign-on bonus, varying degrees of bonus depending on how big your deposit is. Next round's the promo code. You can play all the games you want to play at mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag. Make sure you use that promo code next round so you're maximizing everything. I had a big win on Vandy this weekend. They were giving me 12.5 points at mybookie.ag. I laughed the entire game. We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. You can play at mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag. Here's the quote from Shane Beamer postgame. And I won't give you any opinion from me. I want your reaction to the quote. Quote, the way Alabama plays defense, I told our receivers we were going to have opportunities in this game. And he's talking about the meeting the night before at the hotel before he goes into the game on Saturday. Mm-hmm. The way Alabama plays defense, our receivers were going to have opportunities. Your thoughts?
My thoughts were that with what Alabama's playing with on the back end in terms of youth and inexperience, in that particular game, I didn't think there was a scheme problem. I thought there was an approach problem, because every time they came after South Carolina, good things happened. When they didn't come after South Carolina, bad things happened. And you exposed the back end a little bit. I just feel like they need to be a pressure defense 70% of the time-ish and come after people. And you know what? If somebody gets them and they catch a one-on-one and the quarterback's good enough and experienced enough to identify it and get the ball out of his hand before he gets pressured and gets rushed, by all means, you got us. But I don't think their mentality in the zone game or the 4-man rush game is good enough. We've become accustomed to seeing Alabama being able to control the line of scrimmage with 4 pass rushers.
Right.
5 at a maximum. I don't think that's who they are right now. And so for me, when Shane Beamer talks about those opportunities, I don't know if he thought that they'd be able to handle pressure and be able to win one-on-ones downfield and hold up front, because they weren't able to do that. Or if he meant, hey, listen, if they don't come after us, we're going to be able to take advantage of their youth on the back end. I just didn't like the approach. It was like every time they walked up and they got near the line of scrimmage and they decided to bring pressure, simulated pressures of not knowing who's coming where they're coming from, which guy's coming. That was when they had success. I just think that their change-ups exposed them in a negative way.
I agree 100% with you there. So does Landmine Believer. In fact, he goes 1,000% for you in the chat room, brought to you by friends at mybookie.ag. Craig, now I want you watch the tape, right? And you go back, you look at the high 22 a lot, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's all we watch.
So Craig writes in, he goes, man defense gives the other team opportunities, man defense. Now, is Alabama – they used to play, I mean, Nick Saban, Kirby Smart, Jeremy Pruitt, they'd die on the man hill. Is Alabama playing as much man as they did under those guys, or are they playing some zone mixed in? What are they doing mostly in this defense?
I wouldn't know what the percentages are, but generally from a pressure perspective, you're going to be in one or two things. You're going to be in what we'd call a fire zone, which would be a zone blitz, where you are bringing pressure, but you may be zoned to one side, you be maybe man to the other, you may be zoned across the board. Or if you're going to sell out and you're going to bring 5 or more, you're either going to be in cover 1 or you're going to be in cover 0, meaning you're a single high safety and everybody's matched up with a free safety to help, or you're in 0 across the board. There's nobody on the back end. And generally, you're going to be very cautious being in that if the quarterback's a runner, which in South Carolina's case, you've got to be very, very cautious doing that, because when you're in 0, you have nobody to account for the quarterback. So I think they're in quite a bit of man from a pressure perspective. And I actually think, given the inexperience, and they're talented, but they're young. And I think sometimes asking young players to play in man coverage is better if you can get home, because you're not asking those kids to think. You're playing cat coverage. You got that cat, you got that cat, you got that cat. And your alignment, your technique's one thing, but you're not asking them to pass off targets. You're not asking them to have to decipher things. And that can be, I think, better for younger players. And I think that's probably why they need to be pressuring more.
Tom Luginbill of ESPN and the ACC Network. He's here with us as we talk college football every Monday morning live, brought to you by a variety of hosts. Don't forget Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown join us with the middle 8 at 8 o'clock Central Time. And then the next round goes at 9 o'clock. And then later on, Unlocked with Brock Heward and Lance Taylor at 1 o'clock today. Between the end of our next round show and Brock Heward, we do overtime, and that's where you'll hear from Kalen DeBoer and Hugh Freeze today. As we get ready for another college football season, being brought to you by our friends at Gutter Cap. Our buddy Chris Stewart's the owner of this company, Gutter Cap, and this time of year with the fall foliage falling, he'll take care of you. Right now, you get up to 45% off and free estimates if you watch this show. All you have to do is go to the website, guttercapbirmingham.com, guttercapbirmingham.com, or call them 205-823-2212. You cap it, you don't snap it, get off that ladder. They come out and clean those gutters one more time on that house, and then they cap it with that beautiful look you see on your screen right now, and you never have to touch those gutters ever again. And 45% off again if you're a Monday Morning Live customer. 205-823-2212, guttercapbirmingham.com. Back to Alabama and the Tennessee matchup a little bit later on. Did you see Kirby Smart's interaction on the sideline? I saw it in passing a couple of times where he pushed a little bit of a player on the sidelines. I get the feeling he thought it was one of his players or an assistant or something, but a lot of chaos there, a lot of people talking about it. I haven't seen a lot of it nationally. What do you think of that interaction there? Is there something that Kirby's going to have to apologize for here or what?
Yeah, listen, I've watched it a bunch. And Barrett Slee and I were talking about this yesterday on Sirius XM Channel 84. And if you watch it over and over again, he looks like he's trying to get to either his assistant coach or the official on the other side of the Mississippi State player walking through. I don't think he realized who it was. And I say that and people say, oh, he intentionally did. I was like, well, okay, well, let me ask you, what's his motivation to intentionally do that, knowing the camera's on him, knowing it's going to be exposed, and knowing that it would be a huge no-no. And why would you potentially put yourself in that situation? I don't think Kirby, I think he was so dialed into the moment, he was upset about something, and he was trying to get to the official and the coach that were right on the other side of it and just plowed through the guy. I think he would have done the exact same thing if it was his own player. I think he might have done the exact same thing if it was a coach or a administrator or somebody on the sideline. The optics of it don't look good, but the more I look at it, the more I just see a tunnel visioned coach trying to make a point and get to a certain point on the sideline.
But isn't that Woody Hayes sort of lost his mind when he punched the guy in the throat back in the Gator Bowl in the late 70s. You worry about that with coaches who get fired up. You don't think it was rising to that point that he was so intense that he, hell or high water, he was going to do whatever he needed to do and push people out of the way.
I didn't get that. I just didn't. And listen, somebody else may have an entirely different opinion. And I've watched it over and over and over again. Because you kind of feel like you're trying to find that, if that's what he's being accused of. I just don't know. Is he probably going to have to address it this week? Yeah, probably. But from a national perspective, I think it would have risen much faster to a national news item than it has.
Chris, big LSU fan listening down in Louisiana, more on that big win in a second. Kirby said he was trying to get to Schumann. No excuse for it, but that's what he said he was trying to do. Markel said Kirby was wrong as hell. No excuses there. He's a big Ohio State fan. More on that game right now. Markel, thanks for being with us. And everybody in the chat room here on Monday Morning Live. Don't forget I'm drinking the Who is Coffee, the next round blend right now. You can go get that blend and order it and get it sent to you every month like the Dunaway household does. I think we get 4, maybe 6 bags a month. We drink a lot of coffee in the house there. Ground up those beans. Scott Forester, who's running the video ops this morning, he's the guy that curated the taste of all the beans from Colombia and other places around the world. Blend them together. You get the Next Round blend. It's an easy access. Nextround.store. Nextround.store. You can pick up great gear like Lugs and I are wearing on our lids right now. And also order some coffee at nextround.store, nextround.store. We'll come back to Alabama in a little bit and the SEC in a moment. But first, let's bounce around the country to a couple of big Big Ten games. Oregon and Ohio State lived up to the billing. We've been waiting a long time for this one. 7 lead changes in this game. Yeah. And I leave this game thinking neither one of these teams are really better than the other. We could see it two more times possibly in the Big Ten championship and in the playoffs. What do you think of the game?
Thought if they played 10 times, it'd be 5-5.
Me too.
Listen, and I think I said this to you when Ole Miss lost to Kentucky, and I said Ole Miss did themselves no favors with that schedule leading into that game. And I don't think Ohio State did either. This was the first opportunity, multiple time zone changes on the road, hostile environment. And at the end of the day, Oregon made a handful more plays than Ohio State did. And going into this game, my concern was how would Oregon match up front, because that had been a struggle, particularly earlier in the season. I think they'd kind of developed and built towards it. And then in the red area, 2 areas that were concerning for me going into the game was Oregon was had the second most turnovers in the red zone of any team in college football going into that game. They were not red zone efficient offensively, and they were not creating explosive plays as we become accustomed to seeing Oregon create. And against a team like Ohio State, I thought that would be really problematic. But Dylan Gabriel rose to the occasion, and he made every time they needed a button pushed, Oregon pushed the button. And they made the plays that they needed to make when they needed to make them. And I know there's a lot of talk about, the Jeremiah Smith, offensive pass interference, which I think it was. I think anytime you initiate contact like that and there's extension with the arm, that's where they're going to get you. And they got him on it. And then obviously the inexplicable play at the end of the game from Will Howard to not understand what's happening with the clock and where he is on the field was just dumbfounding. But it was a good football game. It was as advertised. I still think you're talking about, the upper 5 to 6 teams in the country are the class of those 2 teams, even with Ohio State's loss. And now, listen, we're going to start heading into these next 6 weeks, Jim, and we're going to start maybe this weekend with some elimination games.
That's right.
I mean, that's what's coming. And you look at the Big Ten and what Penn State pulled off out west against USC and that comeback and that performance. This thing is going to get really interesting with how the SEC is going to unfold. The ACC with Clemson and Miami not playing each other. SMU doesn't play either one of them, right? So what's going to happen there? I have no clue how to handicap the Big 12. This thing is going to be just an awesome spectacle to watch.
Yeah, it's the 12-team playoff. I was worried about the regular season being impacted, and Brownie and I discussed it on the show on Friday. It's just the opposite now. There are so many games. Yeah, there's so many games that now has meanings that would not have had meaning. Conference races to get to, stay at that magical 2-loss line that probably you get 3, you're probably out. A lot of that going on. One more thought on Dan Lanning, who finally, I think, gets his big marquee win. This is his quote-unquote signature win. Lost a couple of Kalen DeBoer and such in his coaching time at Oregon. He gets that big win. But he is a guy, too, that is so aggressive. And much like
last year.
Much like Kalen DeBoer is, and when those two played each other last year, they were that way against each other, and it was 2 great games. Yeah. But Dan put himself, outside the numbers a little bit in this game, and luckily it worked out. What do you think about Lanning's approach to coaching? He's not afraid to roll the dice. Sometimes it doesn't seem the odds are in his favor, but he'll still do it.
I think it's who he is, and I don't think he's going to ever apologize for it. And I think he's weighing some of the risk. I think his aggressiveness is very similar to what we're seeing with analytics. It's just human nature based. It's not book based. It's not numbers based. I think he has a feeling. He has a gut. He believes in his kids, and that's always going to be who he is. Now, are there going to be some times? I think the first matchup last year between Oregon and Washington, he probably pushed it a little too much. And you could make the argument that it cost him. But listen, I would rather do that than have any doubt that you didn't do everything to put the game into the hands of your kids and let them go duke it out.
Ryan Day sometimes is more by the book, more traditional. He's 1-7 now versus the top 5. Go back to that Georgia playoff loss. They were pushing Georgia down the field. Then he got conservative and settled for a long field goal that they missed a few years ago. I agree with you. I come from the old school of watching Nick Saban 85% of the time play it NFL style by the book, take the points and, punt and this and that. He did kick an onside kick in a national championship game, so you can't say he was always by the book. But that was scripted. When I say that was scripted, that was, if we get this look, right,
this is what we're going to do. That's calculated and that's game planned.
I want to ask you, though, the Dan Lanning move with 10 seconds left to play with 12 players on the field intentionally, not by mistake, to play intentionally. Will that bring, you can't do it in the midseason, will that bring a rule change in the offseason? Because I don't know if anybody's thought of this before. Maybe I'm wrong, but I've never seen it before, and you burn that clock time.
You did burn the clock time, and the thinking, and I might be wrong here, but 12 men on the field is a declinable penalty if I'm not wrong.
But do you get that time back?
You don't get the time back, but what he did is he did it to try to stop an explosive play, right?
Right.
So he gave up 5 yards for 4 seconds. But what if Ohio State throws a 22-yard banger and you just decline the penalty?
Yeah.
The clock stops, decline the penalty. So I'm not so sure what the move does if you don't have a guarantee that they're going to throw an underneath throw.
Yeah.
Which in that case they did. And so it worked. And I get that, but what if they would have thrown an explosive?
Yeah.
Then what?
Well, I mean, at that point, I'm thinking, God, it's going to be hard for them to throw an explosive on 11. They damn well better not throw an explosive when we got 12 out there.
Well, the problem is where the guy was, and he looked confused.
Yeah.
I feel like the coaching staff knew what they were doing, but didn't tell anybody. Yeah. So they're throwing him out there, and he's wanting to come back off.
Yeah.
But he wasn't in a position to actually cover anybody.
Right.
Like he was there, but he wasn't there.
It was like they came up with the plan seconds early. If we did this, we could burn a few seconds off the clock.
Yeah.
I love this sport so much. I love this sport so much. Real quickly before our break, and we'll get to all the big SEC, including LSU and Ole Miss in our next segment. But you mentioned Penn State. Okay, Drew Aller had 3 interceptions, but it was his best game ever. Is that possible? That Drew Aller threw 3 interceptions, but it was his best game possible because finally they took the leash off of him and they let the big dog throw it down the field a little bit.
Yeah, he's gotten better and better in the passing game, and they've become more and more explosive, pushing the ball downfield. The turnovers were bad turnovers too.
Yeah,
they were not an unfortunate tipped ball that was not a result of a bad read or a bad decision. There were a couple of bad decisions in there, but his good was really good, and he played his best football when they needed him to, which I think is really encouraging for his growth. That offense is just so hard to defend. And how about Tyler Warren? I mean, holy smokes, 17 catches for a tight end. He threw a pass, right? He took a handoff. I mean, the only thing he didn't do is play defense.
Yeah.
He snapped a ball.
That's what I was about to say. He was a snapper on one.
Yeah, he was a snapper on the razzle-dazzle play. So, listen, that was a big deal. I mean, SC was on them, man. And I'll tell you the other thing, those Penn State fans must have thought they were in the Rose Bowl and forgot it was a regular season game because there was a ton of white in the Coliseum there. And when the tide started turning, it almost felt like a home game. It was weird.
Yep, it really did. Hats off to USC, though they're 3-3. I thought that was a well-played game by them for most of the game. I don't understand Lincoln's lack of timeouts late, but in regulation. But, it is what it is. It almost worked out for them. All right, so Penn State is now up to number 3 in the AP poll. It's Texas, Oregon, Penn State, Ohio State, Georgia. Georgia and Texas play each other this week. We get a lot of good games with these 2 massive conferences now. We'll talk more about what's ahead, but what we saw this past weekend, LSU dominates down in Red Stick, or at least they win in overtime. We got Vandy still good. We got the wild Big 12. We'll set the table for Alabama and Tennessee. And is Georgia just missing a little something? All that still to come in the final half hour, being brought to you by our friends at roback.com. Hey, the best golf gear all spring and summer long is at roback.com. Promo code TNR20 gets you 20% off. But now we're moving into cooler temperatures. They've got great hoodies, unbelievable golf pants that look good to wear out to dinner or anywhere you want to work. You get it all at roback.com. Roback.com, promo code TNR20. It gets you 20% off that order at roback.com. Again, TNR20. Use the promo code and save with us. More with Tom Luginbill on the other side. This is Monday Morning Live.
Call the next round now at 205-734-0923.
Hey, Lance Taylor from the next round to tell you about one of our favorite places for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That is Hamburger Heaven since 1982. Hamburger Heaven has been serving Birmingham's best hamburgers, cheeseburgers, French fries, hand-spun milkshakes, and sandwiches made fresh to order. All of their ingredients are fresh and prepared daily. This includes their beef, always fresh, never frozen, hand-pattied each and every day. For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, visit any of the 4 locations, Highway 280, Irondale, Gardendale, and Homewood. Hey, there's nothing worse than waking up to a plumbing problem. Don't get caught in a flooded house. Call the guys at Hemphill Services. Adam, Chad, and the team at Hemphill are the only ones I trust to fix it and fix it right the first time. Hemphill Services does it right and always at a fair price. For all of your plumbing, cooling, and heating needs, trust the name that Birmingham has trusted since 1954. That is Hemphill Services. Call now, 205-229-2090. That's 205-229-2090.
Storm season is here. Make sure you have a plan of action in place right now. Greg from Pell City and Storm Restoration Roofing should be your first call when storms hit. Insurance companies love working with Storm Restoration Roofing because of Greg Nelson's name and reputation in the industry. When storms hit, call Greg Nelson. He's local, 205-542-3531. He's the home of the free no-cost roof inspection. Greg from Pell City on Facebook, 205-542-3531. It's Storm Restoration Roofing.
By now, you guys know how I feel about my fashion. However, did you know that I care about your fashion choices? Cargo shorts are out, flip-flops are only appropriate on the boat, and please throw away that stained t-shirt from college. You may be thinking, EG, that's all I own. What do I do? Here's what you do. Go to nextround.store and fill your cart with a wardrobe that is approved by me. Stock up on logo t-shirts, hoodies for football season, and hats for every day of the week. Trust me on this one and head over to nextround.store to get stocked up for this season.
Just because you've quit going to the gym, it doesn't mean that you have to quit gym altogether. Dunaway, that is. With our Next Round podcasts open 24/7, 365, you can access gym anytime you'd like. While you may have done away with your treadmill routine, our version of Dunaway is standing by ready to get you back to your absolute best. Find all that lovely Jimmy D-led content on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and in the podcast section of nextroundlive.com. This message is sponsored by Jimmy Crypto Inc. and Jimmy Crypto for President.
From the creators of The Next Round comes two new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. Two team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
Twin Peaks is the best in the game. Here, you're in the red zone for every college rivalry and divisional matchup all season long. On game day, you never have to decide which teams to watch, only what combination of bites, burgers, wings, and more to order. Plus, where else are your favorite draft beers always poured at a frozen 29 degrees? Only at Twin Peaks, the #1 sports bar.
Stick around after the sun sets. Twin Peaks is open really late. Wind down with bourbon and late night bites. Only at Twin Peaks.
Happy football season. At The Next Round, we strive to make our loyal listeners feel like they're a part of the action all season long. My name is Emily Grace McWhorter, and I do that by bringing you along for any given Saturday in Auburn or Tuscaloosa. From pregame warm-ups, touchdowns that make you feel a part of the play, and everything in between, our goal is to make you feel like you're inside Bryant Denny or Jordan Hare. Follow along on our social media at Next Round Live on Instagram, X, and Facebook. Also, check out thebarnauburn.com and covercrimson.com while you're at it. Here's to Fall Saturdays.
Back with you on Monday Morning Live with ESPN's Tom Luginbill. As always, if you're watching the show right now, please give us a thumbs up. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe everywhere at Next Round Live on the Next Round Live family. AU Chase, back to the Kirby smart push. Out of context, it looks worse. It's an emotional game. Probably should and will apologize. But to me, no ill intent there on his part. A lot of people are talking about this has the 2007 college football season impressions there. That includes Peanut there with the big K, blue K logo there. He thinks this has a lot of 2007 vibe to it. Do you feel the same way, Lugs?
It could. It looks like it's shaping up that way. And as we keep going down the stretch here, you see where Ole Miss is at right now. We got Texas and Georgia coming up. It's Tennessee, Alabama. Like we're going down the stretch of having some fan bases biting their nails on a minute by minute basis.
Thank you, Brownie. As we roll on here on next,
did you tell Brownie to get off our show?
Monday Morning Live as we continue on to your point, Lugs. Miami, Louisville, Virginia, Clemson, Nebraska, Indiana, Oak State, BYU, Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, Michigan, Illinois, UCF, Iowa State, Kansas State, West Virginia. All those normal seasons in a week like this. Probably wouldn't have a lot of big impact. They all, in some form or fashion, have an impact on the playoffs coming up.
Yeah, I mean, well, listen, if I told you right now that Iowa State is the 11th ranked team in the country, did you even know that?
No, yeah. I did, but nobody else
I know,
would,
but you know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
we're sitting here talking about the college football playoff, and we're talking about a bunch of teams that we would not even be mentioning. We wouldn't be discussing any of them. We'd be wondering who's going to the Holiday Bowl, right? Now we're in this position where there are going to be some games played each and every weekend that are eliminating teams, and that's going to leave teams like an Indiana, like an Iowa State. And there's a ton of I keep joking about why is nobody in this equation talking about Pitt or SMU? Like, we're going to talk about Indiana. We're going to talk in some of these teams and how you could sneak into this equation. There are so many teams still up on the wall that you got to pay close attention to.
The whistling Ryan Brown will be with you, and Marcelo coming up in the middle 8. Right now, though, we run down the other games we haven't gotten to yet. Ole Miss LSU goes to overtime down in Baton Rouge. BK still unbeaten at night there at Tiger Stadium in Death Valley. Fun football game in that one. But for LSU, man, everything's still out in front of them after their opening weekend loss.
Remember Brian Kelly in the opening press conference and the loss to SC, and he says, their quarterback made plays when he needed to, and ours didn't. Well, Brian Kelly, because your quarterback just riverboat gambled your football team to victory and made those plays and really was the difference in the game. Did you know Ole Miss had 22 third down attempts? 22 third downs in the game. What that tells me is Ole Miss isn't Ole Miss on offense right now. They are not dictating terms. They're not getting first downs on the regular. They're not getting first downs on a second down and whatever the conversion may be. Heavily penalized. Turned the ball over twice. That I just thought it was a heck of a fun football game, and I think any football game in that atmosphere, in that stadium at night, there's nothing like it in college football. So, well, that's not true. Probably the whiteout games at Penn State at night are probably similar. But anyway, I thought it was a great game, and there's LSU sitting there with, like you said, everything right in front of them. Yet another team we're just glossing over.
Yeah, back up to number 8 in the country in the AP poll, and very much in control of their own destiny down the stretch. And of course, they've got Alabama coming up a little bit later on too, down there at Tiger Stadium. Red River was a dud because Texas is good and Oklahoma has no offense, but it was a 34-3 beatdown for the Longhorns. They're the number 1 team in the country. They hold on to that, but Quinn Ewers comes back from his injury, hadn't played since September 14th, throws for 199 yards. My favorite player of the weekend was Quintrevion Wisner for Texas. Man, that guy put some rubber down on the turf there at the Cotton Bowl.
So, yeah, a couple of things with Quinn Ewers. I thought he started off really slow. He was hesitant. Didn't look like he was dialed in. Didn't look like he was decisive. Looked like he hadn't played, right? And then all of a sudden, he just kind of settled in and it's like, okay, we'll get right back into this. And I thought he really settled down and played good enough down the stretch. You mentioned Wisner. So remember in August when those running backs at Texas were just dropping like flies?
Yes.
I mean, it was one after another. And somehow they've got a healthy run game. And, they've still been banged up, but they're playing with a bunch of guys they never thought were going to have to play tailback. Jarrett Gibson, the true freshman. Jaden Blue's a guy who kind of came on late last year. But Wisner's kind of been this guy. And then defensively, even with the loss of, Byron Young and Stewart from last year, they're still a problem. I mean, the defensively, Colin Simmons is a handful off the edge. He's kind of the Texas version of Dylan Stewart at South Carolina. But I think Texas is really good, man. And, the only thing that they haven't had to do, they haven't faced anybody that can handle them in the passing game defensively. And maybe that will happen this week.
Maybe it will when Georgia comes to town. Georgia hosting is on the way to Austin to play Texas. Georgia 41-31 over Mississippi State. They never were able to put them away. Carson Beck 459, but Georgia looks like they're just missing something.
They are, and I don't think they're running the football very well. I think their inability to just impose their will and just lean on people and constantly be in second and third and short situations in terms of lines to gain. That's not who they are. They're having to throw the football, I think, far more than they'd probably like to consistently move the football. And that's been a bit surprising to me. So when you say that, all right, now is that passing game going to challenge Texas a little bit? Maybe, but maybe also that Texas front forces the issue and you see problems continuing to try to run the football for Georgia.
We'll look ahead to Alabama and Tennessee in a second. But Vanderbilt, everyone was expecting, especially the people in Vegas, for them to go up to Lexington and get beat. And they never trailed in the football game. And they went at 20-13. They never trailed. What does that tell you about Vandy?
So I imposed a new rule on my Sunday show, Jim, that until further notice, that any game versus Vandy in which you lose is no longer allowed to be called a bad loss.
Right. That's a good rule.
That's a good rule, right?
Yes.
That's the new rule on Vandy. Out of respect for Vandy, the way they're playing. I mean, Kentucky had 12 penalties, turned the ball over, but Vanderbilt takes advantage of those opportunities. Vanderbilt was 8 of 13 on third down, so maintain possession of the ball. They're physical at the point of attack. Quarterback's dynamic and tough. He rallies the troops. This is a team that isn't fluky. This is a team that's well coached, well prepared, knows exactly who they are, and they're tough at the point of attack on both sides of the football. We've got to start looking at them as if they were wearing different colors or a different uniform and stop looking at them as Vandy of old as of right now.
Would you give Diego Pavia some Heisman love? Would you put him in your top 5 in the Heisman voting?
No, I don't know if I would do that. I think he means the world to that football team. I don't know if, he's in a Ryan Williams, Jeremiah Smith, Travis Hunter type of category right now.
Dylan Gabriel took a big jump this week.
Dylan Gabriel, I think he took a huge jump. Diego Pavia reminds me do you remember Matt Grothe at South Florida?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. 2007. Speaking of 2007, right?
Yeah, had those really good teams, and he's just this gritty, gunslinging type of guy that was a good athlete. He just made everybody around him better. That's kind of what he reminds me of.
Yeah. Okay, we'll flip now to the games coming up this weekend. And it's brought to you by our friends at MyBookie. MyBookie.ag is this entire show, and our active chat room is over in the MyBookie.ag chat room. Again, you can play the Major League Baseball playoffs, which continue tonight, Monday Night Football, which rolls tonight, college football, which is back tomorrow, every day of the week this week. All the college football on Saturday, college basketball cranking up soon, all with the promo code NEXTROUND. Next round is the promo code. And you go there and you get a deposit bonus. It varies in amounts by your deposit there. Next round, get you that deposit. MyBookie.ag is the place to go. Play the games, anywhere, some parlays as well, some in-game parlays. It's all right there. MyBookie.ag, MyBookie.ag. The promo code is next round. No space there. Smash that together. Next round at MyBookie.ag. Tennessee's offense is struggling. After the 1914 loss at Arkansas, they win in overtime against Florida 23-17. But they had 0 points in the first half. What's missing with Tennessee with Alabama coming to town?
Haven't been able to run the football in the first half, which is what creates all the explosive plays. That's 2 weeks in a row now where you have a high volume of pass attempts and low yardage production, right? So Tennessee's entire game is to spread you sideline to sideline, 53 1/3 yards wide. And they're daring you to not play with a full box. And when you don't, they're going to line up and run it. And then when you have to seat somebody into the box, that's when the explosives start to come over the top. Well, they haven't run the football effectively, which has limited their ability to create the explosives in the passing game. There's something missing. I don't know if it's the opponents that they're playing that have been able to push them around a little bit up front. I thought Arkansas and Florida, and by the way, Florida is improving. I know there's a dark cloud over Gainesville. I know what the schedule is, but they are improving. You're right. We're seeing some progress there. And now, obviously, with the loss of Graham Mertz, I don't know exactly what that means for them going forward. But for Tennessee, they've got to get back to being able to dominate the line of scrimmage and get the run game going early, because without that, they look very pedestrian offensively.
Speaking of the run game, Tennessee's defense is really good. Alabama had 20 traditional runs with non-Jalen Milroe in it, with Jam and Justice this past weekend. 20 traditional runs for 68 yards against South Carolina. Do you think Alabama needs more of the traditional run game with the running backs? And can they do that against Tennessee, whose defense, no matter what you say about where the offense is right now, that ball defense still looks legit?
Yeah, I kind of look at Alabama a little bit with non-quarterback runs the way I look at Georgia to some degree. And, not being able to just line up, impose your will and lean on people and run the football without the use of Jalen Milroe. I think that Jalen Milroe is the X factor against a team like Tennessee, because if you want to stop the run, but you want to play man-to-man defense, you don't have anybody to account for the quarterback. And so for me, would you like to see a 100-yard rusher out of one of the Alabama running backs, or have a guy with 68 yards and another guy with 117 not named Jalen Milroe? Absolutely, I think that would be a healthy recipe, and I also think it would help you win the early downs to get in third and manageable.
When you're watching the tape, those running backs are very talented. I don't think it's their fault. I mean, what do you think is not connecting? Can you have a great offensive line that's great at pass protection and not good at running the football? Is that possible?
Sure. I think that's very possible. I think you can have an offensive front that's and I think oftentimes when you make a statement like that, there's this notion that, you're soft. Well, I don't necessarily believe that has to be the case. That can be the case. I don't think that's the case necessarily with Alabama. I just don't. I haven't seen them as a cohesive unit. And to be honest with you, this was true last year, for Alabama for much of the year, up until really the back half where they really kind of went on a run where they're just not lining up and winning as regularly up front as we become accustomed to seeing. And, the one thing too with Alabama and what's happening with them right now, and I am not making any excuses, but every time there's a coaching shift, a regime change, for whoever it may be,
right,
there's going to be a period of adjustment, newness, failure, figuring it out, finding a way. The problem is, in this particular case, the previous regime is led by Nick Saban and the program's Alabama. So it becomes so over magnified.
And I agree because of what has happened. Couple of comments on this game particular as we get ready for Alabama-Tennessee coming up this weekend. Jacob says, Nico looks like he's regressing. The more tape that defenses have gotten on the young quarterback, they're starting to take some easy reads away from him. You agree?
Yeah, I think what's happened is more sample sizes on tape, the more there is to study and there's more to identify, right? And so when you last year you see the bowl game versus Iowa, and then all of a sudden you got a pretty good amount of snaps to you where you can really – I remember years back talking with Alabama's staff, and they were playing Arkansas, and Ryan Mallett was the quarterback. And they said, what we've discovered is if you force him to his right, if he's gonna be uncomfortable, you're gonna force him to his right. If you force him to his right, the percentages on the throws are way down from where they are from within the pocket to outside of the pocket. And so that's where they brought their pressure, and that's where they forced him to move. So things like that start to come up that you start to identify, and you utilize them in your game plan.
Several people saying they think Milroe was a little banged up in the game on Saturday, something we'll hear from Kalen DeBoer about a little bit later on this morning. JB says Oregon more physical than the $15 million roster at Ohio State. Did you think that was the case on Saturday in that classic game?
I thought that they played good enough up front and better up front than I thought they would against Ohio State. More physical, down in, down out basis. I don't know. Maybe at times. Well, listen, that Ohio State roster was literally put together to win that game and to win the Michigan game and to win the Penn State game and whatever game they have to play in the college football playoff. So they failed the first test.
Brett writes in from somewhere on the road, Arkansas gave everyone the blueprint on defending Tennessee. Do you believe that's the case, that Arkansas showed everyone a way to maybe take Nico out of the game a bit?
Well, I think what they did, first of all, it begins and ends with, can you get an offense off schedule and out of rhythm by winning up front? So if you want a recipe, that was the recipe. Arkansas kicked Tennessee's tail up front, right? And I thought Florida got after Tennessee up front. When you control the line of scrimmage on offense, you control the game. Your passing game, your run game, all of it. When you don't, everything goes off schedule. That's one of Ole Miss's biggest issues with their offense. When they can't go fast because they're not winning up front, they're not the same offense.
Ephraim says Alabama defense will definitely see that shuttle pass again. Can you explain to me how you can't stop it after you got exposed twice at Vandy and South Carolina runs it again with success?
Well, in order for it to operate, you're going to isolate a defender that you're going to choose not to block, and you're going to put him in no man's land, meaning that he's in what we'd call a conflict of assignment. And he's got to have to either take the pitch or the underneath. He can't be two places at once. So I think it's always something you're going to practice against. But what people are going to do when they run it is they're going to come up with probably a way of running it out of a different look, right? I think if you get nabbed on it and everybody keeps running it and they're running it in the same formation, the same motion, the same shift, and they're still getting you, shame on you. But I think, anybody's susceptible to have to defend that out of a different look. And again, you're asking somebody to play two men.
I appreciate all the chat room chatter there. Great questions from you guys every Monday morning with us. Monday Morning Live with Tom Luginbill of ESPN. Remember, give us a thumbs up as you watch this on YouTube. Like and subscribe everywhere at Next Round Live. A couple other notes from around college football as we get ready for the weekend. Army and Navy both ranked in the AP poll for the first time since the early 60s.
America.
America. That's exactly right. It's about to get a little more difficult on the Army schedule down the stretch. They drilled UAB, which is an easy win for everybody right now. What do you think of that game, and what do you think of what Army and Navy are doing?
I think the quarterback is a hell of a player for Army.
Bryson Daly, yes.
Yeah, and they've branched out a little bit offensively. They're almost more of a spread option team than they are a true flexbone, wishbone option team, meaning they look a little bit more traditional to today's spread offenses. The quarterback, first of all, can throw the football effectively. That changes everything out of the option look and out of the quarterback run look. They move the pocket with him. I think they've got some really fun wrinkles within that offense. It's a great offense to study. That guy's done such a good job there, man. And first of all, you're not dealing with any headaches. You're dealing with great people. You're dealing with kids you can depend on, kids that have a higher purpose. Football is important, but when you look at the list of their daily routine, how far down the list it actually is, like what a pleasure it must be to coach those guys. And to know that you come to work every day, you're not going to have the SID come up to you and say, hey, so-and-so got arrested last night, or so-and-so's going in the transfer portal, or so-and-so got in trouble. I mean, golly, it's every coach's dream.
We got about 3 minutes left. I want to point out Ryan Walters, who's the head coach at Purdue. They lost in overtime to Illinois. They're 1-5, but he fired Graham Harrell to start calling his own plays. That's not a big deal, except if you know anything about Ryan Walters, he's a defensive coach, and he's calling his own plays now. That is the most Jim Dunaway to hell with the rest of you thing I've ever seen in my life.
Hey, listen. He realizes that what runs downhill, right?
That's
it
right.
will eventually get to him. And I think what he's saying, if I'm going to be responsible for the meal, I better buy the groceries.
That's right.
I'll just take this over for right now, and we'll figure something out in the offseason if I can get a couple of wins and save my job.
Everybody's in the hunt in the Big 12, it seems. Who's more impressive to you right now? Is it Kansas State? Is it BYU? Is it Iowa State, who's number 9 in the AP poll? Or could it be 34-year-old Kenny Dillingham at Arizona State, picked to finish last?
Well, Kenny Dillingham has done just a remarkable job, and especially when you look at where that roster was when he took it over, and they just flat out had no players. And remember, Jaden Rashada was set to start for them and got hurt, I think 1 or 2 games in. So, listen, I think, in my opinion, it's Iowa State and BYU right now. And the reason why is because they run the football, they don't beat themselves, they're playing sound defense. All of the football IQ fundamental components to the game, they do right. And the rest of the league right now has found ways to lose games, and they seem to be figuring it out.
Couple of 15-second answers here. Can Georgia beat Texas in Austin?
Can they?
Yes.
Yeah, I think they can.
Will they?
No, I don't think they will. I think that Texas is really, really good. I think you look at Texas the way we look at some of those better Alabama and Georgia teams of recent history.
So they're that good, deserving of number one. Alabama, Tennessee, quick pick.
I actually think Alabama's going to win this game.
You do?
And I do. I think Alabama's going to win this game. But I do want to see them come after. I want to see them win the line of scrimmage on defense, because that has been the recipe from Arkansas and Florida.
He's Tom Luginbill, and that is Monday Morning Live, brought to you by our friends MyBookie, mybookie.ag. Have a great week, Lugs. Tell Tanil I said happy birthday again. And
Same to your son.
Yeah, thank you. The middle eight is next.